Welcome to the Rams post game show. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer. We have a post game show for you guys here. Not a great one after a tough loss for the Rams, but live from New Orleans at his hotel is Gilbert Manzano, who does it for the OC Register, LA Daily News. Gilbert, how are you doing, sir? How is Bourbon? How did Bourbon Street treat you last night?
Yeah, it's going well. I'm enjoying my time here in New Orleans. It's been a good time, but maybe not so much for the Rams. It's the same old result here. But they keep finding ways to maybe hit rock bottom. Last week was a Cooper Cup injury, and now Matthew Stafford potentially. I'm gonna be serious about that. Potentially, two concussions for him because the Rams don't want to say if he had one last time, but that's a scary situation for Matthew Stafford. And the Rams have gotten to the point where they are 3-7 on the season. Defending Super Bowl champions, 3-7, Victor. That's kind of crazy to think here on House of Horns. But when you're 3-7 and your quarterback might have two concussions in 2 weeks, it's time to consider the option to shut down Matthew Stafford along with Cooper Cup. And then after that, what are you playing for? Pride, being professional, like we mentioned this week, and for the young guys to develop. But same result. Besides the running game popping off for a change, everything else felt the same because this defense can't do it anymore. Jalen Ramsey can't point the finger anymore. It's a whole lot of bad. And when that third quarter occurred with Stafford going out, this team had no chance, Victor.
Yeah, and I was actually really surprised from what I saw in the first half. Things looked really good. Um, as you talked about in your story, and we'll get into your story as we go on this post game show. But I thought the offense looked good with Stafford, and I know he left, and it was good to see Bryce Perkins out there. We've it kind of reminded me of the preseason, how we talked about. We also saw McCutcheon out there. So, but yeah, the defense was a big letdown today, and I thought one of the things that was really bad to see was Jalen Ramsey get torched twice, once by Olave, and then on that touchdown where he said that kind of looked like he got pushed off, but honestly, it was a clean play by Juwan Johnson there. But yeah, it was a tough scene in the second half. I mean, they had some momentum in the first half. You kind of like what you saw in the first half, but then once Stafford left the game, you kind of knew that it was going to be an uphill battle for the Rams in this game.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out the defense because we keep neglecting the defense. Yeah, it was bend don't break. They were doing their job. They weren't getting takeaways. They weren't getting the sacks. Yeah, the Raheem Morris system is a little kind of frustrating, but they were doing their job. The last 2 weeks, Victor, against Andy Dalton and Colt McCoy, they got lit up. They got torched. And Jalen Ramsey did not want to speak again because it was a bad game. And how do you go the last 8 games, one takeaway combined for this defense? Bobby Wagner, Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, a lot of great players on this defense, and you have zero takeaways in the last 4 games combined. Andy Dalton, Colt McCoy. I get the offense is struggling. They're going through their 10th offensive line combination, but at some point you got to help out. And when you're getting torched by a rookie wide receiver and Chris Olave, and if you're Aaron Donald, you're like, I got there. I gave a hit on Andy Dalton. He still got away through the ball, and they didn't do their job downfield. Olave, broke free, touchdown. Kind of a little bit resembled the play for Tutu Atwell, but without the pressure and all that breaking down. But Chris Olave getting that felt like the game was over, and it just
Yeah,
felt
and I
like.
want
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Laura, finish up.
I just want to say it felt like the new theme here is not just the offense being broken; is they don't have complementary football. I was thinking about it when you told me about Brandon Powell last week. I was trying to see what he was doing in the return game. He had a couple pop off, in the midfield. He did something. The defense and the offense are not doing complementary football, Victor.
Yeah, no, and even some of the other players on defense stepped up. Leonard Floor had two sacks. You had Gaines also with two sacks. I really like some of the things they did with some of the complementary players, but outside of Aaron Donald, I mean, everybody else seemed to be not doing well on defense. But I just wanted to mention this comment here for those that will be listening on the audio. Pio Time came on here and says another tough loss. Horns up, praying for Stafford, and it's been a recurring theme with the Rams, especially now that they've lost four in a row, as we've seen. It's something new. And then I saw right before we came on your story. Can you share what McVay had to say after this loss?
Yeah, for Matthew Stafford update, there really isn't an update. When this happened the first time around, again, that's why I can't say did Matthew Stafford sustain a concussion in Week 9 against Tampa Bay because the team never said it. And who am I to say, hey, you got to reveal this private health matter to me and tell me you have a concussion? But they won't say it, so I can't say he had one or not. So all I could say is that he was in the concussion protocol for about 2 weeks, Victor. Now the trick is like, is he in the concussion protocol right now? He is not currently in the protocol, but he's still being evaluated for concussion. So we got to make sure we get the wording right there. So he left in the third quarter. Stafford did. I want to say 8 minute mark or 8:30 mark of the third quarter. And the weird thing was like Stafford was making it work with this offensive line. 10th combo again. 10th combo. Matt Skura playing left guard was a 12th offensive lineman to start in a game this year for the Rams. That's a whole lot of linemen to play for the Rams. But he wasn't sacked the first half. He was avoiding pressure. The running game was so beneficial, Victor. Like we finally saw the running game and we saw the wonders of a balanced attack. What can they do? Well, you don't get sacked as much, right? Well, he got sacked in the third quarter, and that's when Stafford felt off. He went to the medical blue tent. I kept looking with my binoculars, what's going on. McVay kept coming over to Stafford to talk. Reggie Scott, the head of the medical team out there for the Rams, kept talking. They kept going back and forth. And you don't want to mess around with a concussion. I don't want to speculate, but he said he had one a week ago or 2 weeks ago. You don't want to mess around. Get out the game. You feel fuzzy. You feel off. Don't return. So we don't know if he had a concussion today. We don't know if he's in the protocol. All we know, he's still being tested. But again, I think it's gone to a point where, like, if he does have one and say it is two, you got to consider shutting it down for the rest of the year. At this point, when you're 3-7, who cares? I know you don't have a draft pick. Who cares if the Lions get a top 10 pick? Worry about your star players and get them healthy.
I agree. I mean, you have to make sure you start thinking about the future and forget about whatever's going to happen this season, because that's, you need to protect your players at that point. But I thought it was pretty interesting to see how that whole thing happened, because you see Stafford going to the sideline and sitting down with McVay, and they're having a conversation, and then all of a sudden you see McVay pointing to the, like, he's the one that called over the medical personnel, and then they went into, so it was him that pretty much spotted. He wanted to make sure he was okay. He probably heard something, and that's how he ended up in the medical tent. But I wanted to also talk about what you brought up in terms of, I want to make sure we give the offense credit here and some of the things McVay did with Stafford, because as you talked about, the running attack, they carried the ball 17 times in that first half for 65 yards, which was more than we've seen in the last few games. So, and I really like what I saw from the rookie running back. That was awesome to see. My his name escapes me right now, but
Kyron Williams.
yeah, Kyron Williams. I mean, he had a nice burst. Even Cam Akers had some good runs there. So that was impressive to see. But it honestly, the one that just stood out for me was that Tutu Atwell 62-yard bomb. I mean, which was his first career touchdown. I mean, that was like, I was like, oh, there he is. Like, I was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Like, we've been asking for that for this whole time. So that was great to see. And then, of course, Gilbert, that 11 play 87-yard drive that concluded with a 6-yard touchdown from Stafford to Allen Robinson. And I thought they had the momentum going. And unfortunately, like we talked about earlier, Stafford had to leave. And I think the momentum just went out the game for the Rams there.
Yeah, this Rams offense has a way of tricking us. So like, hey, there's some good here, and then maybe they'll figure it out, and then they always go back to their ways. Like, yeah, they got 20 points today, but that's actually like an improvement for them, right? Like that's not even a lot, but like it usually feels like 16 points, and they got their 20. But to get a season high and 148 rushing yards, that was big, and I'm sure it helped out having Bryce Perkins in there at the end, be immobile. But he's not your star quarterback for a reason. And yeah, you got that glimpse there of why they drafted Tutu Atwell in the second round was that play action pass, that bought himself some time there because again, it was a lot of guessing because you were a balanced attack. That's what they were missing, having that balanced attack. You get to play the play action, and I spoke to Tutu Atwell in the locker room, and he's like, it didn't matter what type of route I was running. I'm going straight down the field, and I know the ball's coming to me. So it was kind of like, hey, at some point, take your shot. And he beat two guys, and Tutu Atwell was a burner. Yeah, we could figure out his game another day, but for him to finally get that, it's a confidence builder. And then for the team on the sideline, they were so happy for Tutu Atwell. This team loves Tutu Atwell. He puts in the work. Yeah, he's small. Yeah, he gets pressed off the line of scrimmage. He's a small dude, but when he gets it going, you gotta do a balanced attack. You gotta call better plays. You gotta protect to have Tutu out well. He can't do it by himself. So that was a positive. The running game I liked, with Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, Kyron Williams, and we keep screaming at McVay to pick a running back and just go with it. And today they showed that hey, maybe a committee could work. But to have, like I mentioned, 12 offensive linemen play in a game this year, Ty Nsekhe going down in the second quarter, and then you have Bobby Evans play left tackle who was a guard who struggled and was benched. It's not a good look to have that in there. But I pretty much wrote off this team as a postseason, contender last week. So when Tutu Atwell had that touchdown, I'm like, this team's not going anywhere. I got to focus on something positive eventually. I've done my part as a B reporter. I've been fair and honest down the middle. I'll focus on Tutu Atwell a little more because he's going to be a guy you got to have for next year, right?
Yeah, and as we talked about in the preview show, we want to see what we asked the Rams fans, hey, what players do you want to see going forward? Because that's what you're looking at. And today, showed that what we're why we asked that question, because we want to see those players now. We're gonna see how they develop, and I think that's the way you have to look at the season now. The as we go forward is develop some of these players and see what you have, so that way you know what you're going to keep in terms of your young player or your young core going forward. Because honestly, at this point, with the back-to-back concussions, speculatively for Stafford, it might be he might be done for the season, just like it was with Cooper Cup. So now you just have to keep it professional, as you talked about with Bobby Wagner. Sorry, his
Yeah.
his names are going on. But I wanted to share some of the comments that we've been getting. It says, true to the game 209, we are done, guys. Next season sounds about right. Just don't know why these guys would resign, knowing that this season would be this bad. I mean, you just never know how the season's gonna go. I mean, you're coming off a Super Bowl, and as we talked about last week with Ram fans, you won the Super Bowl last year. At least you got the Super Bowl, and you should be happy with that. These type of seasons happen sometimes. It's hard to repeat it in the NFL, as we've seen. The only team that's repeated has been the Patriots back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, Sean McVay used to start his press conference with saying like, "Hey, we've never experienced this much injuries before. We've never had this much shuffling in the offensive line." And he's always like, "Well, those are just only excuses. I probably shouldn't be making excuses." Now it's kind of like, yeah, man, it's a reality. It's a challenge. It's the truth. What else can we say? And yeah, they are still excuses for the team because the best teams usually they make it work when injuries occur. But it is a different level of injuries. I understand that for Sean McVay, and maybe I shouldn't get on him too much today because they were some glimpses there for the running game. Like he showed commitment to the running game. So it's a start there. But when you don't have your best receiver, you probably won't have your best quarterback. It does present a lot of challenges, and you could tell McVay is just frustrated out there. And then like, what would have happened if Bryce Perkins got hurt? Hopefully that is not the case for him. But who do you go to? You don't even have John Wolford out there. And my colleague Kevin Modesti told me that the emergency quarterback is Cooper Cup, who's not available. So I wonder what the heck would have happened if that situation occurred. They missed out there. But again, if you're trying to look for positives, Bryce Perkins, looked decent. It was nice to hear that when he went into the huddle, we forget this guy's a young quarterback. I don't want to say third year in the NFL. I think last week might have been his first career pass attempt in a real game, or not preseason game. The Van Jefferson kept saying, Allen Robinson kept saying, "Hey man, it's cool, relax, we got you. Just call the offense. We'll keep fighting. And yeah, they kind of cut it close at the end, but it's just the same old thing with this team. No takeaways. They can't score quickly, and now the injuries just keep piling up and up. And is it Bobby Evans the rest of the way at left tackle? I don't know, Victor, at this point.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation. I mean, like we've talked about as well. Like the Rams have been one of the healthiest teams for the past four season, and then this year, just it finally, they got bitten with injuries, and it's gonna happen. I mean, the NFL is gonna give you injuries. Teams are gonna. I mean, last year it was the Baltimore Ravens. This year it's the Los Angeles Rams. But I wanted to give Daniel Calderon, who's been someone who one of the fans who comments on here a lot, and so I wanted to give him a shout out. He says Stafford, I think, is going to retire. I mean, it's kind of tough to see what happens. I think with the two concussions, it might be something he thinks about. He's also had some back injuries, but I think he's too competitive. I think we'll see him again next year. You just want to make sure that you keep him healthy the rest of this season, and because at this point there's no reason to bring him back, right, Gilbert?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that it was more like McVay pushing, what's going on. And honestly, like I hate to kind of speculate and even mention this, but like when I was looking through my binoculars, like what's going on with Stafford, I was surprised they said it was for a concussion because he kept grabbing at his knee. So maybe like you're right, like maybe he was going in for like a knee check, and then it's like, well, let's check out the rest. And like, hey, are you feeling a little off? So credit to McVay to check in on his quarterback's health. Yeah, I get he wants to kind of be secretive about the concussion, maybe for like to throw off the team. Like, hey, if he has a concussion, you pretty much know he won't play. Or hey, you don't want to give out the private matters of what Stafford's going through. So he hasn't even spoken to us the last couple of weeks, Victor. So we don't even know what the heck is going on with Stafford. Like when he was supposed to talk to us on Friday when he got cleared, it happened after the media, I guess, conveniently was there. So we have no idea what's going on with Stafford. We're kind of left in the dark here. But I'm glad to hear that McVay was talking to him to making sure that he's okay because this is a serious thing. We saw it happen with Tua. We saw it happen here with the Rams with David Edwards getting two concussions, and they actually pulled the plug on him this week because he was supposed to come back. David Edwards was, and he just didn't feel right. So for the most part, I think the Rams are trying to do it right here. So the first hit that Stafford took today, they were just checking in, and it just didn't look good for him.
Yeah, and it makes sense to do that because you don't want to make it worse, especially since he's coming off of concussion protocol. We don't know if he had a concussion before, but they're just trying to play it safe at this point. And I mean, you have to do that. You don't want to put him at risk, especially when you have a lost season. But I wanted to share a couple more comments. I know you're almost coming down to the end here in terms of time with you, so um we have Mike Malik here saying there's nothing wrong with him and the Rams are throwing the season. So I mean, it's hard to speculate. You're there covering the team. We don't know if they don't want to give you the information. There's nothing you can do, right, Gilbert?
Yeah, I get people are frustrated, and Mike, he's a little out there sometimes, but he likes to participate. So shout out for that, and of course keep engaging viewers of House of Horns. I know there's what 7 games to go, but start looking ahead, and we'll get you covered for the future and all that. But going off of that, just to end here or a little more, Victor is like we mentioned Alvin Kamara giving the Rams defense fits because of what we saw McCaffrey and the 49ers do. And I think the bigger problem was that they have kind of two guys like that. Like obviously Taysom Hill is not Alvin Kamara or Christian McCaffrey, but you could tell that unknown mystery. Is he going to throw it? Is he going to run up the middle? Threw them off. And I know Taysom Hill didn't have the biggest yardage total, but just having that kind of element of intrigue really threw them off. And that's why you can open it up down the field to Chris Olave. So I think having Alvin Kamara, who had 89 total yards, wasn't a crazy game. But having those two guys like that, like the Joker kind of role, they play a little bit of everything, really hurt this Rams defense. And you called it earlier in the week. Like, remember what happened to McCaffrey? When they face versatile guys, they usually have trouble. And, they lost Jawan Johnson, the tight end, a couple times. Jarvis Landry looked weird to me in wearing number 5 because I thought that was Teddy Bridgewater for a long time. Number 5 for the Saints, but he got going too. Victor, so it was a long day for the Rams defense. It was an ugly game, but I'm going to shout out one of my favorite beers right here.
Oh, nice.
That
Yes.
it was that type of game for me that I needed a beer when I got home. And we won't be getting out the good stuff today, Victor, because
No.
Yingling. Hopefully, I say that right. Yingling.
Euglin?
I just say Yingling. I think I've heard Yingling.
Mm.
It's the good stuff here in New Orleans, but we'll eventually get to the beer of the game.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to bring up how like they got torched by the tight end in this game, which was kind of weird to see because we expected, Kamara or even Taysom Hill to be the ones who did the damage, or even Olave, but it was the tight end. And so this is where Rams fans have been, critical of Raheem Morris, and the offensive coordinator for the Saints did a good job of attacking them up the middle with the and doing some crossers with the tight end. So yeah, that's where this game was won by the Saints, was taking advantage of their tight end, because he had that 32-yard catch, and then he every time they needed a big play, it was either Olave or their tight end. So yeah, that was a big game there for the Saints. But let's get to our at the end here, as we get to who gets the 12 pack of beer. You're having a good beer there, but we're gonna give out a terrible one here, like some Milwaukee's Best or
Yeah,
whatever,
they're not
whatever.
getting this. They're not getting
Yeah,
this stuff today. The
yeah.
Rams are not getting that for sure. But I mentioned his name earlier. We both have, and I want to say that was the only catch that he had. Yes, it was. Tutu Atwell was he was the leading receiver on the team because of one catch, 62 yards, and again, it was just nice to hear that people were so happy for Tutu Atwell because he had a lot of pressure. Second round pick out of Louisville, couldn't make it work, couldn't stay healthy. He was a healthy scratch the past two games. Victor, uh, they didn't have room for him, I guess, to play. Third one this year, healthy scratch. So for him to kind of get the confidence builder going, there you go. Tutu Atwell gets a warm Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. So enjoy it, Tutu. Uh, that was a nice touchdown. Even myself, I'm like, I've been watching this boring offense week after week. That was fun to see for a little bit, right?
Right. No, and for me it's going to be great games, man. I love seeing him get out there, and he just shot up the gap. He did some great things today. He had two sacks, so for me it's great games. I really love what he did today on defense. It was good. Like, it wasn't just Aaron Donald having to do everything. So it was, and Leonard Floyd. But for this one, I'm going to give it to great games. I just thought he stood out on defense, especially along that defensive line.
Yeah, and I think he missed last week, right? He had like an injury, so for him to come back and contribute right away, or maybe been 2 weeks ago, I forget. He missed one game. That was big for Greg Gaines, and yeah, Leonard Floyd, Greg Gaines, both had a pair of sacks, which for this defense is kind of rare this year, right?
Yeah, but so before you go, Gilbert, give us a plug here. Let us know what you got working on, and what you've been working on, I should say, and then what else you have coming out on the OC Register, LA Daily News for the people.
Yeah, if you want to read more about Matthew Stafford and where the team stands and what the outcome of the game was, you could check out my story currently at the Orange County Register, LA Daily News, or follow me on Twitter. People told me Twitter was going to die this week, so I felt silly tweeting out things like comments, play by play, but people are
All
still
right.
on there, right? So
Yes.
follow me at gmanzano24, and then I am currently working on a Tutu Atwell store because again, just kind of switch it up. I know it was one catch. I get it. Leave me alone. But I will do a notebook on Tutu Atwell. I will get on the defense tomorrow. I will definitely do that because I spoke to Troy Hill in the locker room. Very honest conversation about why he came back to this team, and it wasn't to be 3-7. So look out for that tomorrow at the OC Register.
Yeah, and then before we go, I just want to give a shout out to the people who are in the comments and engaging with us. I want to, even for 49er fans, who was Coach T Bates, Daniel Calderon, Payo Time, True to the Game 209, Mike Malik, Daniel Calderon, Gary Trujillo. All you guys, thank you for contributing to this show. We really appreciate it. It's good to see the engagement from people out there. So, Gilbert, get us out of here, and as we get ready for the Chiefs game.
Yeah, and also if you're watching the replay of this post game show, comment under the video here. So we want to see more engagement. We love it throughout the whole week. We have a preview show every single week. I think I do a post. Yeah, no, I think I do in the community section of the YouTube channel House of Horns. I do kind of a mailbag section there. So comment questions. We all love it here at House of Horns. Like Victor said, thank you. But I'm trying to get done with this 2-2 story so I can return to Bourbon Street, have more
Nice.
drinks, have a good time here in New Orleans. Because I really enjoyed the Superdome vibe, even though it was like a battle of two bad teams. The crowd was amazing in the Superdome, and I love the city, so I'm gonna go enjoy it. But on that note, ya nos vamos, pues vámonos.